Welcome, everyone, to the Unfiltered Mind, where we tackle the big questions, the ones that keep us up at night, the ones that have baffled humanity for millennia. Today, we're diving headfirst into perhaps the biggest question of all. Does God exist? And if so, how do we even begin to prove it or disprove it through the lenses of both faith and science? It's a loaded topic, I know, but I'm thrilled to have this incredible panel with me today to explore it. Monica, Thomas, Selena, thank you for being here.
Thanks, John. It's an honor. And you're right, it's a question that permeates every culture, every era. From a scientific standpoint, it's often about what we can observe, measure, and replicate. And when it comes to God, well, that's where the waters get a bit murky for empirical science.
Murky, yes, but not necessarily empty. From a philosophical or theological perspective, the murkiness isn't a barrier, it's an invitation to explore beyond the purely material. We're talking about something that, by definition, transcends the natural world, so expecting purely natural proofs might be missing the point entirely.
I think for a lot of people, myself included sometimes, it's less about proving it in a lab or in a philosophical debate, and more about what it means for our daily lives. Like, if God exists, what does that change? And if not, what then? It's such a personal journey for so many.
That's a fantastic point, Selena. Let's start there. Thomas, when you talk about transcending the natural world, what kind of proofs or arguments are we typically looking at from a faith-based or philosophical perspective? What's the traditional groundwork?
Well, John, one of the oldest and most compelling is the cosmological argument, often called the first cause argument. Everything we observe has a cause, right? The universe itself began. The Big Bang tells us that. So what caused the universe? It logically points to an uncaused first cause, something outside the chain of cause and effect, which many identify with God.
But Thomas, even with the Big Bang, science is constantly pushing the boundaries of what caused what. We're exploring quantum fluctuations, multiverse theories. It doesn't necessarily demand a supernatural starter. It suggests a beginning, yes, but not necessarily a personal intentional one. And the uncaused cause still leaves a philosophical leap, doesn't it? Why does that first cause have to be God as opposed to some unknown physical law or state we haven't discovered yet?
Yeah, like my kid asks me, why is the sky blue? And I tell him about light scattering. If he then asks, but why does light scatter? And I say, God made it scatter, that feels like a bit of a cop-out, doesn't it? It just pushes the question back one step.
Selena, that's a fair point, but it's not a cop-out if you believe that uncaused cause is the ultimate explanation. It's not about stopping scientific inquiry, it's about discerning the ultimate ground of being. And to Monica's point, the uncaused cause, by definition, must be beyond our current understanding of natural law, because it initiated those laws. It's not a question science can fully answer within its own framework, because science deals with what is within the universe, not what created the universe itself.
So it's almost like science describes the how, and faith or philosophy attempts to address the why, the ultimate origin. But what about the complexity we see in the universe? Monica, the sheer intricacy of life, the fine-tuning of cosmic constants, doesn't that suggest something more than random chance?
The teleological or design argument. It's very compelling at first glance, I agree. When you look at the human eye or the delicate balance of planetary orbits, it's easy to think, wow, this must have been designed. But from a scientific perspective, evolution by natural selection offers a very robust explanation for the complexity of life. Over vast amounts of time, incremental changes driven by environmental pressures lead to incredible adaptations. What appears designed can be the result of a long, non-random process of selection.
I remember learning about that in school. Like the giraffe's neck, it didn't just poof appear long. The ones with slightly longer necks could reach more food, survived better, and passed on that trait. It makes sense, you know?
And I'm not denying the power of evolution, Selena. It explains how species adapt and change. But it doesn't necessarily explain the origin of life, or the fundamental laws that govern the universe which allow for evolution to even occur. And when we talk about fine-tuning, we're not just talking about biology. We're talking about fundamental constants of physics, gravity, the strong nuclear force, the cosmological constant. If they were even slightly different, the universe either wouldn't exist or life as we know it would be impossible. To some, that level of precision points to an intelligent designer, not just happy accident.
It's a strong argument, Thomas, I'll give you that. But then we venture into the multiverse hypothesis. If there are an infinite number of universes, each with slightly different physical constants, then it's not surprising that at least one of them, ours, would have the right conditions for life. It's like winning the lottery if you buy every single ticket. And even if we acknowledge fine-tuning, it doesn't automatically mean God. It could mean deeply complex, emergent properties of reality we're only beginning to grasp. Science's job is to keep investigating those possibilities before invoking a supernatural explanation.
I heard once someone say that asking who designed the designer or who created the creator just leads to an infinite regress. If God needs a creator, who created that creator? It gets a bit dizzying, doesn't it?
It's a common objection, Selena, and a good one. But the philosophical response is that God, by definition, is not a created being. God is the uncreated creator, the ultimate ground of existence. If God were created, then God wouldn't be God. The chain of causality must terminate somewhere, and for many, that ultimate termination point is what we call God.
It's fascinating how these arguments ping-pong between science and philosophy, each informing or challenging the other. But beyond these grand cosmic arguments, what about personal experience? Many people speak of a profound, undeniable feeling of God's presence, or answers to prayer, or what they consider miracles. Where does that fit into this proof versus science discussion?
That's where it really hits home for a lot of people, I think. You can talk about physics and evolution all day, but if someone genuinely feels a connection or sees something they can only explain as divine intervention, it's incredibly powerful for them. My grandma, she always said she felt God's hand in her life, especially during tough times, and for her, that was all the proof she needed.
And that's absolutely valid as a personal experience. As scientists, we don't dismiss subjective experience, but we try to understand the mechanisms behind it. For example, neuroscience has shown that religious experiences can correlate with specific brain activity patterns. Prayer can reduce stress, create a sense of community, and improve mental well-being, regardless of whether there's an external deity responding. It doesn't necessarily disprove God, but it offers alternative explanations for the feeling of divine presence.
Monica, that's where the two realms often diverge. Science can explain the neurological correlates of religious experience, but it can't, by its very nature, determine if there's an external reality corresponding to that internal experience. If God does exist, then it's perfectly rational to expect that our brains would be capable of experiencing or perceiving that reality, just as our eyes perceive light. The how of the brain doesn't negate the what of the external source, if there is one.
So, essentially, science can explain the human response to something, but it can't confirm or deny the existence of the something itself, if that something is outside its empirical domain. That brings us to the famous NOMA principle, non-overlapping magisteria, where science and religion each have their own domain of authority. Monica, do you think that's a fair way to look at it?
I think it's a helpful framework to avoid unnecessary conflict. Science tells us about the factual nature of the universe, how it works, its composition. Religion, or faith, often deals with questions of meaning, purpose, and morality, the oughts rather than the ises. Where it gets tricky is when religious texts make claims about the ises, historical events, creation narratives, or interventions in the natural world that directly contradict well-established scientific understanding. That's when the overlap creates tension.
Yeah, like the age of the Earth, right? Science says billions of years, some religious interpretations say thousands. That's a pretty big difference. How do you reconcile that if you believe in both?
Selena, many theologians and people of faith successfully reconcile that by understanding ancient texts as not literal scientific treatises, but as profound theological or metaphorical truths. The Genesis creation account, for instance, isn't necessarily a scientific textbook detailing the how, but a narrative conveying fundamental truths about creation, God's sovereignty, and humanity's place within it. It's about meaning, not mechanism. And many scientists are also people of deep faith. They see no inherent contradiction because they understand the different languages these realms speak.
That's a powerful way to frame it. Different languages, different questions. But let's flip it for a moment. If God doesn't exist, what are the implications for morality, for meaning, for our place in the universe?
Honestly, that thought can be a bit scary for some people. If there's no ultimate judge, no afterlife, does anything really matter? Does it mean we can just do whatever we want? I've heard people say that, and it's a pretty bleak outlook.
I understand that fear, Selena, but I don't think a lack of divine oversight means a lack of morality or meaning. Many atheists and humanists argue that meaning is something we create for ourselves. Our empathy, our desire for fairness, our capacity for love, these are inherent parts of human nature, shaped by evolution and social development. We build ethical frameworks because they foster flourishing societies, not because a divine being commanded them. Meaning comes from our connections, our contributions, our experiences, not from a top-down decree.
And while I agree that we can derive meaning and morality without explicit belief in God, the question becomes, what's the ultimate grounding for that morality? Is it purely subjective, or is there an objective moral law? If morality is merely a social construct or an evolutionary byproduct, then can we truly say that something like genocide is objectively wrong, or just socially undesirable? For those who believe in God, divine command provides that ultimate objective grounding.
That's a deep philosophical rabbit hole we could spend another hour on. The Euthyphro dilemma, right? Is something good because God wills it, or does God will it because it is good? But bringing it back, it seems we're constantly navigating this tension between what we can observe and what we intuit or believe. Monica, how do you approach evidence for something that, by definition, might be beyond direct observation?
As scientists, we look for indirect evidence, for patterns that only make sense if a certain theory is true, even if we can't directly see the phenomenon itself. We infer black holes, for instance, by their gravitational effects. For God, the evidence often comes down to philosophical arguments, as Thomas has presented, or personal testimonies. The challenge for science is that these don't fit into the typical empirical methodology. It's not about denying the possibility of God, but acknowledging the limits of the scientific method in addressing such a question.
So it's almost like science is saying, show me the receipts, and faith is saying, some things you just gotta trust or feel. It's like asking a poet to describe love using only chemical formulas. They're just different ways of understanding the world.
Exactly, Selena, and sometimes the receipts are there, but they require a different kind of reading. The order and beauty of the cosmos, the existence of consciousness, the universal human yearning for transcendence. For many, these are profound pointers, indirect evidence if you will, that strongly suggest a divine reality. It's not a proof in the mathematical sense, but it's an accumulated weight of experience and reason that builds a compelling case.
So, we're left with this intricate tapestry where science offers incredible insights into the mechanics of the universe, and faith and philosophy grapple with its ultimate meaning and origin. It doesn't seem like there's a simple yes or no answer that satisfies everyone, does there? Not one that can be universally proven or disproven.
No, there isn't, and I think that's okay. The ongoing exploration, the questions themselves, are what drive us. Whether you find solace in a universe governed by natural law or in one guided by a divine hand, both perspectives offer profound ways to engage with existence. The key is respectful dialogue and continuous learning.
And remembering that no matter what you believe or don't believe, we're all trying to make sense of this crazy ride called life. Kindness, understanding, and trying to be a good person, those things seem to be important no matter which side of the God question you land on.
Beautifully put, Selena. Ultimately, the question of God's existence isn't just an intellectual exercise. It's a deeply personal one that shapes our worldview, our values, and our hope. And for many, the very existence of such profound questions, and our capacity to ask them, points to something beyond ourselves.
What an incredible discussion. It's clear that the conversation around God, proof, and science is not a simple either-or, but a complex and rich interplay of human inquiry. Whether you lean on empirical data, personal revelation, or philosophical reasoning, this quest for understanding is fundamental to who we are. Thank you, Monica, Thomas, and Selena, for shedding so much light on such a profound topic. And to our listeners, keep asking the big questions. That's how we all grow. Until next time, stay curious.